Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. I know I say that in every single video, but this time around, I really do hope that you are all doing very well in light of the whole coronavirus situation. And that's actually what this video is going to be about today. It's going to be slightly different to my usual videos, and it's going to be talking about a very hot topic at the moment and how it relates to films and to cinema in general. Now, I will preface this video by saying that, of course, when it comes to anything to do with the coronavirus, the utmost priority here is the health and safety of the public. I'm not for even a second suggesting that films and the entertainment industry is a priority in this circumstance whatsoever. Of course it isn't. But hey, I didn't do medicine. I actually did law, but I like talking about films on YouTube. So that's what I'm going to continue doing here, and I'm going to be talking about them in the context of this whole coronavirus situation. And by the way, that's what it's going to be referred to as from here on in, the situation, because I am so tired of hearing that C word that we're banning it from this video. So today we're going to be talking about the impact that this huge pandemic has had on the film industry. As I'm sure you guys have heard, a ton of films have been delayed. Some of them we don't even know if we'll ever see in the cinema, and a lot is up in the air when it comes to what is going to happen to the films that have been pushed forward and what's going to happen to the films that are going to be met with a ton more competition that they had ever anticipated when they booked those slots. But first of all, before we even get into the situation, I have to say that 2020 so far has been a bit of a lackluster year for films. I haven't been overly impressed by the films that I have seen so far. In fact, there haven't been many that I've seen so far. I really enjoyed The Gentleman, of course, which I have a review of on my channel, and I got a chance to see 1917 this year, but that's technically a 2019 release, so I wouldn't count that as a 2020 release. But so far, The Gentleman is pretty much my favourite film, and that's kind of unexpected, even though I really do like Guy Ritchie. But I definitely feel like going into this year, I wasn't as excited for the film releases that we were going to get as I was going into 2019. I mean, what a year for film 2019 turned out to be. Having said that, I will admit that a lot of the films that ended up being some of my favourites from last year were smaller films that I wouldn't have even known to anticipate at the beginning of the year. They came out during award seasons and during the film festival seasons, and that makes sense because that has been the case in the previous years as well, where a ton of films that come out at the latter half of the year may be smaller and they may not have had a lot of press surrounding them, end up being some of the best of the year. But that's something we definitely have to keep in mind when we talk about the situation, which we will in a second. But just speaking overall in regards to the release schedule for this year, I have to say that I wasn't the most excited that I've ever been. There are certain films that did pique my interest and that I was genuinely excited for. I really am excited for Mulan, which we'll talk about later on again. And I'm definitely excited to see what Christopher Nolan has to offer with Tenet. But I have to say, when it comes to Christopher Nolan, I'm not the biggest stan of his. Like, there are plenty of you guys out there. The films that I really enjoy, I love. The films that I don't like, I just forget about immediately. So when it comes to Christopher Nolan, he's not quite my god in the way that a lot of other people consider him. But I was looking forward to Tenet. I was looking forward to James Bond somewhat. I don't really care about the James Bond franchise, to be honest, but all of that is now up in the air because of this crisis, which we'll now get into. So I think it's fair to say that the biggest jaw-dropping moment that we got in regards to the whole situation and the film release schedule was when James Bond moved its dates. No Time to Die was supposed to come out, I believe, like the 3rd of April or early April, and it's now been moved all the way to November. And that's just crazy if you consider the fact that the campaign had already begun for this film. You had Daniel Craig even starring in SNL, and you also had the Billie Eilish song being released, and everything was supposed to just coordinate with the release schedule, and everything was supposed to move smoothly for the premiere of the film. And then you have this huge crisis, this global crisis on your hands, and you don't know what to do at that point. point. But there was definitely a lot of consideration with that decision because, of course, you have China closing down all of its cinemas. No one can go to the cinema, at least up until this point. So they would have lost a huge chunk of the international box office had this film been released right now. And then you have other countries as well following suit, with Italy. And here in the UK, we're kind of being discouraged from going out into huge like public gatherings. And I'm pretty sure that cinemas are one of the last places that people want to be in right now. It's just kind of a breeding ground of pathogens. I wouldn't be surprised if the box office this weekend and indeed for the rest of the month and the following months are really suffer in the UK and worldwide due to this crisis. So I definitely think it makes sense for a film like James Bond to move its release date. But as a result of it moving, I think it helped kind of create this domino effect of other films that were supposed to be released around about this time changing their release dates to the later part of the year or even to next year in the case of F9, which again, I have no interest in watching F9, but I think for fans who had literally just seen the trailer for the film in anticipation for the film that was supposed to come out in a month or so, they must have been very disappointed because now it's coming out all the way next year where Fast 10 was supposed to come out. So it's really just everything has just been shifted to either the latter half of the year or to an entirely different year, which is just, it's crazy. It's something that's never really been seen before in the film industry. Now, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of F9. I don't really care about James Bond that much, but what I was really looking forward to was Mulan. I was really looking forward to seeing the live action Mulan, and I'm really upset now that it's been delayed. I don't think the date has even been confirmed as to when it's going to be released. Now, I knew that this was going to happen because again, you have that Chinese box office that's just been eradicated from the equation, and there's no way that Disney was going to release Mulan, the live action Mulan, which they changed to be more representative of the original folklore, just so they could appease so that they could appease the Chinese audiences so that they can get those Chinese box office dollars, which they didn't get the first time with the animated Mulan. There is no way that they would have released this film as is in a time when the Chinese box office wasn't even in play. So I understand why this happened and I kind of expected it to happen, but it doesn't hurt any less. In the case of Black Widow, which was also supposed to come out relatively soon in April, I'm anticipating that it might also move depending on the situation, how it progresses. I mean, it really is like a day-by-day basis as to what information that we get. But in the case of Black Widow, as I'm filming right now, they haven't moved it. They haven't changed the release date, but I anticipate that they probably will, especially because this is Black Widow's solo outing, something that a lot of people believe to be highly overdue, including myself. And in fact, I'm not overly excited for this film either, just because I think it was about 5 years too late. And considering the fact that, spoiler alert, the character dies in Avengers Endgame, and I'm not the biggest fan of preludes or prequels because I know how it's going to end. So it's not as fun. So in the case of the Black Widow movie, I do anticipate that it might move, but to where then becomes the question, because where on earth is it going to find the space? Disney usually plans these things like several years in advance. I don't know how they're going to find the room for this film because already it's becoming so jam-packed in the latter half of this year. And going back to what I was saying earlier about how I often discover some of the best movies of the entire year in the latter half of the year during like award season and everything, I don't know how these films are going to be able to compete, because now you have a ton of these huge blockbuster films that are being just shoved to October, November and December when they were supposed to have their time to shine. And not to mention there were already blockbusters scheduled for this time. I mean, we have Godzilla versus Kong, which was supposed to come out actually right now, like today, I think. And that was pushed even before the whole situation to November. So that's going to be battling it out with James Bond, which was not the intention of the studios whatsoever. And then you also have Marvel's The Eternals, which is supposed to come out in November. And if Black Widow is pushed forward towards like an August, maybe the September, October release, how will that compete with the Eternals? Like, who knows? Maybe it'll be too many Marvel films in such a short period of time, or just too many films in general in such a short period of time? Are people even going to be going out there watching films after being in isolation for so long? I wonder if these studios are actually accounting for the fact that people won't be more inclined to spend their money going to the cinema at the end of the year, or at least so much so that they would be able to go to every single film that's being released and being pushed back to this short period of time. And speaking of Marvel, of course, the huge elephant in the room when it comes to films that have been pushed back over and over and over again is New Mutants. This film was so close. It was so close to the finish line. I swear this film has been running the world's longest marathon, but unfortunately it just arrived at another hurdle, a hurdle that no one could have ever seen coming. At this point, I don't really know why Disney won't just drop New Mutants on Disney Plus or on Hulu. I think would be a better fit because they have the majority sharehold of Hulu. So why not just make the most of it and have New Mutants on Hulu as this big selling point, as opposed to being just a drop in the ocean when it comes to cinematic releases? Because when is this film going to come out? Maybe like a Halloween release, but there's so many films in the early November, late October region that there's no way that this film could compete. It's just, I have no idea, but it's so unfortunate because it really was so close to the finish line. We were almost there. We were less than a month away after like 3-4 years of waiting. But unfortunately, it was stopped. It was halted by an act of God. So at this point, because of all of these delays and because of the already lukewarm release schedule for 2020, the next film that I'm actually really looking forward towards and actually really excited for is Wonder Woman 2. And that's coming out in June, which means half of the year would have already passed by the time that Wonder Woman comes out, which means we would have lost half a year's worth of good films. I mean, that's insane to me. I mean, yes, usually it's the case, again, that you have some of the best films in the last half of the year, but to have nothing else to look forward to from here to all the way to June is just so disappointing to me as a movie lover. 2020 is not looking great, is it? At least not in the first half. I think the second half of the year will definitely be putting the work in to make up for it. But on a brighter note, whilst going to the cinema is looking less and less attractive in this environment, we always have streaming. Yes, Disney Plus is finally arriving to the UK in March, so I will finally be able to check out The Mandalorian upon everyone's recommendation. And on top of that, there have been a bunch of amazing TV shows that I have been checking out and I would very much like to highlight here. Now, I will mention that I also have a best TV shows of 2019 list right on my channel, which you can check out. But this list is an entirely different list of TV shows, so you can double up on your recommendations. The first one that I wanted to recommend is Sex Education. If I had watched Sex Education before doing my best TV shows of 2019 video, it most definitely would have featured on that list because this is a fantastic show. I was a little hesitant going into it because I thought it would just be about some awkward teenagers, and I can't really relate to a lot of shows or a lot of films that are about that subject matter. But I went in with an open mind, and thank goodness I did because it's such a good show. I really love the characters. I love the setting. I love how it's like a quasi-American / British setting, and it's kind of got this timeless 80s-ish feel to it. And I think it's one of the rare shows where the first and second season are equally good, because for some of the other recommendations I have here, I would definitely say that the first season is far superior. For example, The Young Pope, which is another show that I got into this year. I love the first season of The Young Pope. The second season is actually called The New Pope, which stars John Malkovich alongside Jude Law, and I really enjoyed that season as well. But I do think that the first season was just far more focused, and it was so well constructed around the character of Pius XIII, which Jude Law portrays. Whereas in the second season, I feel like John Malkovich's character, he didn't really shine through. He didn't get enough of a chance to prove himself, to show himself to be the great pope that he could have been. I don't want to be giving any spoilers here, but I definitely feel like his personality was a bit weaker than that of Jude Law, who just shone. He shone in his role as this pope. And another example of a show that has an incredible first season and a good second season is Pose. I really enjoyed the first season of Pose. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. This show explores the LGBTQ community, and in particular the trans community in New York, I believe, or in America in general, during the 1980s and early 90s, and during the HIV/AIDS epidemic crisis. I absolutely love the characters. I love the exploration of this culture. I think it's just such a well acted, well produced show, and I definitely feel like it was an insight into a whole new world that I had never seen or experienced or even heard about, and it was something that I very much enjoyed throughout. Although I will say that, again, the first season is better than the second in my opinion. In the case of What We Do in the Shadows, which is my next recommendation, there is only one season so far, and this show is fantastic as well. This show just provides you with some snippets into the lives of these crazy vampires that exist in the What We Do in the Shadows movie world, and there's even a couple of cameos in here which I very much enjoyed. It's really funny. It's something easy to have on in the background, and you don't have to fully pay attention to any plot points or anything to follow an overarching story. You're just invited into the crazy lives of these crazy characters that are just brilliantly written and brilliantly acted. And speaking of brilliant acting, a show that I finally decided to explore after seeing how many nominations and wins it got during the Emmys and during the Golden Globes was Fosse. Michelle Williams won pretty much every award that she was nominated for this show. So I was like, what is going on? What is this show I've never even heard of? I finally got a chance to see it because it was on BBC iPlayer. It's so good. I mean, I'm not that surprised that it's a good show because she won all of the nominations. Like, it makes sense that her performance was great in the show. In terms of the subject matter itself, like, it's not something that I'm entirely passionate about, but that's the thing. Those are the projects that always get me, is the ones that I don't think I'm going to like because I don't really care about the subject matter, a la, you know, Ford versus Ferrari. But then I end up watching them and they're so good that they transcend any of my preconceived notions and any of my general personal preferences and actually get me to really enjoy them. And finally, speaking of harmful/helpful relationships, this is a genuine recommendation. Love is Blind on Netflix. There's always Love is Blind. Look, if you're not looking to watch something that has story or creativity or innovation or any of that boring stuff, Love is Blind is a good old reality TV show that merges together a ton of the tropes of other reality TV shows, I'm sure. I'm not a big watcher of reality TV, but this show got me hooked. And for a moment there, my life revolved around this show. So I would genuinely recommend this one. And it's a good 10 episodes. It's not like the other shows that are like 20 episodes long or whatever. This is just a good old 10 episodes. Watch it for a week. Live in these people's lives for the course of 10 hours. And then happily return back to your own. And you know what else is great entertainment? Watching the videos on this channel. And it's free. You don't even need a streaming service subscription to watch them. So check out some more. Check out some more on my channel. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.